You're watching BBC Two and Gold TV.
Never know. The ball is round.
The ball is round.
The ball is round.
Now we ask why football is the world's most popular game and why it arouses such passion. Nick Hornby attempts to answer those questions in The Ball is Round.
Welcome to Planet Football. Home to maybe 1.5 billion fans. Where there's always a nil in the scoreline. And where everybody hates Arsenal. If an alien crash landed on Planet Football, stopped you in the street and asked you to take him to your leader, only the most obtuse would direct him to Jimmy Hill's house or to the headquarters of the hapless administrators of the game. Today, our leader is here in Alphaville, Brazil, opening the newest branch of a well-known fast food chain.
So we're here today.
It's hard to explain the phenomenon of football to those who don't understand it. Why so many people want to watch it and play it. Why once every 4 years our world seems to revolve around it. And why its stars reduce everyone, however important, to a state of simpering, childish sycophancy.
So don't mix.
It's much easier to explain the beautiful game itself.
So don't mix. I'm gonna control it.
It's all about putting the ball into the back of the pizza parlour.
My first match was Goodison Park, Everton versus Wolves, 0-0 draw. I remember it quite well. My granddad took me to the game, and he's a pretty sharp bloke, keen to keep on the traditions in our family, because our family have been Evertonian since the turn of the century. He took me to the game across this enormous cemetery, and I can remember coming over the top of the hill and seeing Goodison Park, and seeing the main stand, and that sound as well that you hear, and I've associated with football ever since, the sort of muffled tannoy system, and as it went quiet, there would be a roar and a chant, Everton, and then I knew I think that was the moment when I was hooked, just as I came over the hill. At that point, if I could have dragged my granddad across the rest of the cemetery, I would have done. You know, he just would not. But I think I think the walk was deliberate too. I think he deliberately walked slowly. I think he understood the notion of foreplay, and he made me go very, very slowly, listening to this, and I was building up, and by the time I got there, I was just so excited.
I used to watch my brother jumping up and down and screaming frantically with tears in his eyes. So I went, and the first game I went to was Chelsea-Liverpool, I think, and I just loved it. And we beat Liverpool 3-1. And the first goal that was scored, I was just on my chair, standing, screaming and shouting with my arms around my brother and my friends, and just having a great time. And after that, I was kind of hooked.
And my brother-in-law came to stay one weekend. To be honest, I knew nothing about football. And he dragged me down to see Leicester City versus QPR. It was December 1970. I was about 8 years old. And I was just in awe of the whole occasion. It was brilliant. Never forgotten it. I can't remember a great deal about the game, but I just remember the day. And I was hooked. I was hooked. That was it.
1970 against Middlesbrough. Malcolm MacDonald was brought down in the area just level where I was. And for me, that was it. Football would be my whole life. It was a great atmosphere. All these people shouting, cheering. It will be a game I'll never forget. My dad took me. It was my first glimpse of football. He wanted to see whether I'd like it. I'd been talking about football a good few years beforehand, and this was it, my chance. Instead of going to see the Railway Children at the cinema, which I'd been to see the week before, this was it. This was to see a live football match.
So what's going on here? Why are these first games imprinted on the memory as indelibly as one's own birthday? Is watching football just another way of killing time, like making things out of matchsticks? or reading Jeffrey Archer novels. For some, the foreplay is as important as the activity itself. But does the game go the whole way? And if there is sex, is there also perversity? Is the game art? Or is it a science? Is it really superior to all other sports? And what can you possibly get back from a game which can be painful and frustrating as well as enthralling? Football is not a complicated game, but this is one of its most compelling attractions. You can play it anywhere, in any weather, on any surface, with any number of people, of any age.
Well, football's sort of fast and flowing, where others can get stopped by certain things. Football played with your feet, which is different from rugby and American football, all played with hands. Rugby, you have to be able to clobber people and be fast to outrun your opponents, but football, you've got time to relax on the ball and you can just go out on the field and have a kick about or in the street. All you need is like a ball and you're alright, but with golf and that you need clubs, balls, a green. It's simple to play and the rules aren't that difficult either.
I don't know, I haven't counted them, but has it still only got, it's only about 17 laws in football. The fact that you actually, it's so simple. And I think it must be terrifying to those big bodies in America who control baseball or gridiron, that little kids can play with a ball and the minimum of kit, and small kids can play. They don't have to be, huge physical freaks.
When you're a child and you start playing football, it's the first thing in your life that you do that grown-ups do, because everything else that you do is like you pretend to be a soldier, you pretend to be a cowboy, you pretend to be an Indian, you might pretend to be a doctor or a nurse, I don't know. But football's the first thing that you do where you're actually doing an adult thing and not pretending. When you play football, you might pretend to be George Best or whatever, but you don't pretend to play football, you're actually doing it. So it's always something it's probably the first grown-up thing that you ever do in your life. Maybe the last, because some of it.
There's nothing he can do about those bullets. With his 33rd ace.
I'd played football in the street since I can remember, and it just dominated. Why that is for other people, I don't know. They didn't go to see Luton Middlesbrough in 1970, so I can't really see what their attraction is. But for me, it was just once I was there, I never turned back.
I think the American mentality is very statistical based, and I think maybe that's part of the reason football's never caught on there, is you can't sort of put loads and loads of statistics into a football match. There's only really one statistic that matters. Unlike, say, basketball, when there's 130, 140 points in a game. Okay, yes, the last basket may be very crucial.
Oh, he's got it, and Irish has got it. It's 69-68.
It's cheap, it's simple, you don't need equipment. You don't need to be a 7-foot person to play. You don't need to be a 17-stone athlete of enormous strength or physical capability to play. It's a game for poets, it's a game for physical poets.
It's art, huh? It's not about fitness and a lot of muscle-bound idiots running around, like running up and down, no. It's a skill. That's where they got it wrong. You got the Arsenals and the Wimbledons, you know, they're just thugs. Just muscle-bound thugs running around. I was brought up with Man City and Man United, you know. And I used to watch, I even went to Man United, you know. I didn't even like United, they're the enemy. But George Best would just stand there for 80 minutes, he wouldn't do anything. In 5 minutes he'd do something.
That's hip, hip, hip,
It's like if you listen to sort of avant-garde jazz, like all this discordant racket, then suddenly in the middle of it, something beautiful comes out. And you don't know whether that beautiful thing is more beautiful because of the discordant racket that's around it, or whether it's actually beautiful in itself. And I think that's maybe a thing with football, where you're never quite sure whether that glorious moment, that peak, would seem quite so high if it wasn't for all the dross that surrounded it, you know.
Chocky number 9 picks the ball up straight away, and San Marino launched the first attack. Oh, and a mistake by Stuart Pearce, and San Marino have scored.
And here's Wright.
The way you win is by scoring goals, and goals don't happen very often. And a lot of the time, football isn't very good. And when it is good, it's always surprising. And I think that when you see tennis, for example, you know exactly what they're going to do. You know they're going to be great. You know they're going to be perfect. You're waiting for them to make a mistake. With football, it's exactly the opposite. You know they're going to be lousy, and you hope that they'll do something great and surprise you.
Ideally steps over it. Waddle! Oh, yes! That's the way to do it!
The surprising Chris Waddle is one of the few modern players you could describe as an artist. He packed his boots, his brushes and his easel and went off to France.
Tottenham fans have always been used to stood for football, but they're not as fanatical. They've got the hardcore who are, but Marseille had 35,000 who are basically mental. They were just so passionate. I've never played in front of a crowd like that in my life, and I mean, but it's different in France. I could play at a different stadium in France, and there would only be like 100 Marseille fans in it, and 20,000 of a different team. But if you did something well, they'd cheer you and shout your name. Really? Where in England, if I did something well, say at any other ground in the country, basically they'd hurl abuse at us.
Once in a rare blue moon that we're sometimes over, there is kindled a mutual warmth, a reciprocal fire. Witness Waddle Magique at Marseille, but those southern French are artists in amour. Their fireworks, flags and flares drum up an equal fervour of desire.
They like to see flair, and they like to see people play with a smile on their face in France. And to be fair, in France you could communicate a lot more with the fans. And I found I could joke with the fans in Marseille as much as I could in Metz or Paris. You know, I played in Paris and I came off the last 10 minutes with an injury and I got a stand ovation and I was playing away. I don't think I'd ever get this in this country, so a different mentality, very different.
Waddle, 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 you knew how to enjoy beaucoup de plaisir avec your adoring public. Quelle ambiance. You had to admit it was never like this, churning out saucissons in that fabrique. Back here, where our rainy terraces are short on smiles and sparklers, we rail in vain. Our gods won't hear. It's one-way worship, unrequited lust. But hell, who expects relationships from religion? The game's the thing. The game will live when the lovers and players are dust.
It's like ballet. The grace of their movements. And the goalkeeper, I mean, you think of goalkeepers being great, big. When you see them leaping for a ball, it's like a dance movement. Because the thing that in dance, the eye and the hand, the body follows the eye, which gives it enormous grace. And then you see a goalkeeper leaping for a ball. Obviously, the body's following the eye, which gives it a beautiful line. I think it's very balletic. Just aesthetically, it's very pleasing to watch.
I don't think it's art, although Although I suppose if you can call cutting a cow in two and suspending it in formaldehyde art, then there's no reason why you couldn't say that Stockport versus Burnley in the Freight Rover isn't art.
You can be as pretentious as you want about the likes of Cruyff and Best, and many of us have been. Their talent was robust enough to withstand any amount of poetry. But they're gone, and as any fan will tell you, it isn't art that drives you up the motorway on a Saturday morning, several hours before kick-off. The chances of seeing something beautiful and memorable in an English football ground are just too remote to justify this sort of devotion, so one has to look elsewhere for a plausible explanation. Right inside the head, maybe.
I feel it's probably an extension of me and an extension of my home. When I walk through the turnstile, I'm walking through my front door. What other people are doing there, I'm not particularly sure, and I sometimes doubt why they're there, and often I see things differently to other people, but I feel when I'm there, I feel very comfortable. I feel you know the person selling the burgers, you recognise the person selling the programmes, and I feel very comfortable there.
If you watch the faces of people watching football, those who are really involved in it, you see the whole range of human facial expressions of emotion. And to some extent, it's about emotional risk. And I think all of us have stood on the terraces on cold February Wednesday evening, seeing our team get stuffed 4-0 by another team, have wondered, what the hell are we doing here? Why are we coming here to be so profoundly miserable and upset? But I think we all seek those kinds of risks in our life, and the compensation for those deep depths are those kind of peak joyous experiences. I mean, some people choose to sort of mess around with other people's wives, drive fast, or go gambling. Some of us just go to football.
Why do you travel to all these places?
Because when you've gone 14 months without winning, away from home, and you know that on a Valentine's Day at Plough Lane, we could just win, even though the ball was moving and Priest didn't take the free kick properly. We won 1-0, and to have not been there, how can you turn around and face people when they say, you haven't won in 14 months and you've been to all those, but you didn't go to the one we won? So you have to make sure that you're there to tell the tale.
Too rushed. Who's wide? Who's wide?
Luton manager David Pleat is in charge of the team. And Neil is in charge of David Pleat.
In the second half, when he sits in the dugout, I sit behind him, and we're on nodding terms. He puts his hand up and tells me enough's enough, and disagrees, and sometimes makes comments of my viewpoint. If I've told him that he should never have signed Alan Harper, which I now have to turn around and tell him what a good free signing that was. Takes Scott Oakes off, and he says, hold on, give him a few more minutes, and then he goes and scores the best goal he's ever scored. And he turns around and says, see? But things like that, we're on nodding terms, and he then has a go in the paper the next week, saying that if I had half a football brain, I'd be on the pitch and not in the crowd, so...
Incredibly, Luton Town are now in the FA Cup semi-final for the third time in Neil's life. His team lost the other two, so the walk up Wembley Way this afternoon is particularly fearful.
Cassie's got his hair cut especially for this.
Number 12, Kenny Hughes. 27, Alan Harper. Number 8, Scott Oakes.
But for Neil and his assistant manager, the third time is definitely not lucky. They're already one down, and worse is to come.
Much of watching the game is about pain. You know, it's about anxiety, and it's about fear, and it's about dread, and it's about making an investment in the bad times for the good times, which don't come very often for most football fans. You know, often people will watch their clubs play for 30 or 40 years and never see them win anything. And then suddenly they'll win an important match, or they'll get promotion or get to a major cup final, and all that pain, that investment, will have been worthwhile. But you have to make the investment. You have to suffer the pain. It's a strange world, the world of the football fan.
What did you do when Luton scored the winner in the Littlewood Cup in 1988?
My dad grabbed me and I buried my head in his chest. It was, I didn't realise just how close it was. When Winterburn had the penalty, I think we were ready to pack up and go again, and if there was more seats available, he'd have probably moved away from me again. But it was a feeling. Suddenly it all happened. The whistle blew, we'd won the cup, and years of thinking about it, suddenly I wasn't quite prepared. And as we got out, I had no money on me, and he bought a flag, which I still have proudly.
There's a very fine line between commitment and obsession, and most people who live on planet football wander over it from time to time. Some people find it hard to wander back again. Meet Raymond, whose studies involve making statistical analyses of games on his computer.
And if you look at it, then you see that he's making a dribble.
For some bizarre reason, over the years, I've come to know where every referee comes from. Now, it's a completely useless piece of information that I didn't actually positively decide to study. But when people say P. Don to me now, I just say Hanworth Park. And people say Iborough, I know he comes from Harleston. Well, I think he may have moved.
And I think that one of the reasons that women find football so difficult and sort of just instinctively shy away from it is that, you know, their men are so obsessive about it that sometimes it's almost as if football is more important to them than they are. I mean, I've got friends who take a month off in July so they can watch the Argentinian friendlies on cable, and I think that that's excessive.
But my husband is an actual football drug addict. Do you know what I mean? I mean, we live in the heart of the country here, and he goes to the Cavendish second 11 reserves. He goes to Glemsford second 11 reserves. His sort of posh game up here is Long Melford FC, and if he's really striding out, he'll go to Sudbury.
Groundhoppers go around and they effectively collect ground. They go to them, tick somewhere off that they've been to and seen a game at, and move on. And on the surface, that sounds like a fairly innocuous and pleasant enough pastime. But when you've been doing it for a few years and it's become an obsession, obviously you run out of the obvious ones fairly quickly. So you get people who specialise in the Northern League, or do the Northern League and move even lower, and they're on this kind of slippery slope into further and further into obscurity.
Now, I used to start to see league football in England, Scotland and Wales, and I've done all the 92 league clubs in England and Wales, and the 38 in Scotland as well. And after that I decided to do some non-league football.
The Northern League have a groundhopper weekend that's specially organised so that the kick-offs are staggered, and that one game kicks off at 11, one kicks off at 3 and one kicks off at 6. So over the bank holiday weekend and got 8 games. It attracts about 400 people, and this year we were talking to a guy who was the photographer because he made a video of it, and he was saying he heard that there was someone there who had photograph albums, like 4 photograph albums, and they were full of snapshots of corner flags that he'd taken, because that was like his little peccadillo, was photographing corner flags. And if you were unfortunate, he would like corner you with these things. He'd start flipping through them. And say, now, there's an interesting story attached to this one.
Look at that. Not an anorak in sight.
Generally, I like to watch Northern League football and get around the different areas, you know, all the different grounds and that. It's very interesting, and it's far more hospitable, I think, to watch non-league football and to, say, go to Newcastle or Sunderland or Middlesbrough. And I just enjoy it, you know.
And I've got a friend who ended up writing a book about the FA Cup, and he was clinically insane for 3 years, collecting facts and stats off the innumerable statisticians that there are. I mean, he would be interested. He'd come in to work, and he'd stand there in front of you, these sort of wild, staring eyes, and say things like, "Do you know, there's no record of Tiverton Town in the FA Cup?" And you'd sit there and think, goodness me, you know, he used to be such a nice bloke. But he came out the other end, and he published his book, and he's fine now. But for a while, we thought we'd lost him.
I had a friend who was a Middlesbrough fan. He said to me, that was when we were kids, and he said, "Do you play Subbuteo against yourself?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Do you find that the team you want to win often loses?" That was a sad comment on being a Middlesbrough supporter, wasn't it?
The goalkeeper lost control of the ball, and number 3 came running in, and that is a goal, so you tell the computer that a goal has been made.
At the big grounds, at Anfield and Old Trafford, and here at St James's Park, the crowd have a fundamental role to play in the drama. Not just because it can influence the outcome of the game, but because the crowd is the screen on which the game is projected. Beardsley, Cole, Lee, Fox and the rest are great players, sure, but they need those thousands and thousands of heads behind them to frame and define what they do on a Saturday afternoon. Imagine these pictures without the crowd. Imagine one man and an indifferent dog standing behind the goal, and a line of trees down one side of the pitch. Footballers may be the stars of the show, but the fans are the unpaid extras, as vital to the experience as the goalposts or the referee. But there's a circular argument which says that so many people go to football simply because so many people go to football. Yes, we want to see the game and we want our team to win, but we also want to lose ourselves for the afternoon in something much bigger than us. Where else can you buy tickets for this sort of communal ecstasy? What was the last one you scored? Can you remember it?
Well, yeah.
What happened?
I was about outside the area, did a 1-2 with the left winger, and he laid it out. I just booted it as hard as I could when he top corner.
Top corner?
Yeah.
And what did you do when it went in?
I just sort of stood there and let everyone jump on top of me.
Chris Waddle, is he going to have a crack?
For 5 seconds there, I didn't know what to do. I mean, I just ran away until I actually stopped over the halfway line somewhere. And even for 5 seconds then, and everybody was playing on top of my back, I'm going to have to watch it to tell you to see what I've done. I couldn't tell you what I'd done. Your mind just goes blank, and you just think, run. That's all I think anyway. I just think I've got to get away from where I've shot or where the goals went in. I've got to get away from it. I don't know why. But that's the way you feel at the time.
It's possibly better than sex. It's a wonderful feeling, and I think it's the one feeling that's really kept me going.
Orgasm. When you score the goal, you know, as we used to play in a full stadium, World Cup, when you score the goal, you go to the people, you start to jump, you know, you put all your, you know, our happiness out. This is like orgasm.
Wow! Yes! And it's in! Oh, wonderful! Into ecstasy. Yes! Oh, and it's in! He's got in there between two of them. Simply the best. It was a thunderous finish. And he scored. Goal!
sometimes I've always thought when I score a goal, I'm just going to turn around and walk back the halfway line. But actually, when you score, you forget all it goes out the window and you're off running. And as I say, for 5 seconds, you absolutely go mad. You don't care what you do. I don't know what it is, jubilation, whatever. I don't know what it is. It's something inside you what just sets you off. I mean, you see some players score goals and they're very calm about it. I think I must have been calm about 2 goals, all of my I've ever scored. It's good as well, you know, when you can run at the fans and they feel they're already charged up. And you sort of, you know, you go to where they're standing and it brings them sort of piling down towards you. And I don't know, it's something I could never explain what it's like to score a goal. It's not as good as sex, but it's a great feeling.
And Chris Waddle's sex life is better than this. We're obviously making the wrong programme.
I had a wonderful dream where Marilyn Monroe came to the end of my bed and woke me up and insisted on talking about Gary Lineker. And one of her chief worries was the fact that she had read somewhere that he said that scoring in a big game was like sex, if not better. And all her dreams about what a lovely gentleman he was and everything were rather destroyed by the fact that she didn't feel that she could help him in any way and was always sort of thinking, well, what could I do for this guy, you know, if sex is rather inferior to scoring in front of millions of people.
And you sometimes see players, they score goals, and they almost literally don't know what to do with themselves. And it's the same for fans. I mean, you can be standing alongside somebody at a football ground who you've never seen before, you've never met. For men in England, it's hard for them to touch each other and to be comfortable physically with each other. And yet, when a goal is scored, you literally grab the person next to you, you hug them, you jump around, you celebrate your togetherness and your collective identity in the goal. And it's a great release. It's a place for men particularly, where in societies which are not very exciting now, you can do crazy things. And I think that's part of the attraction too. It's a great emotional, physical release. You can shout at referees, shout at players, collectively, physically, emotionally express yourself in a way you can do hardly anywhere else.
Playoff final last season between Leicester City and Swindon, and we were 3-0 down just after half-time, and to all effect, dead and buried. And incredibly, somehow, we pulled it back to 3-3. And when the ball rolled over the line, Steve Thompson, I love the man, Steve Thompson rolled the ball over the line to equalise at 3-3, and it was absolute pandemonium in our end. It was unbelievable, and you just can't believe that Wembley Stadium, playoff final, you've come from 3-0 down to 3-3. And I can still close my eyes and I can still get that feeling. In fact, the hairs come up on the back of my neck when I think about that moment.
A goal is just an incredible release of tension. There isn't anything like a goal, because it can be so long in coming. You can be standing there gritting your teeth, willing the ball to go somewhere near the net, and when it eventually does, I mean, it is a tremendous release.
Stewart again.
Yes!
Everybody sort of goes through the same feeling of jubilation, of elation, and if you like, everybody in the crowd becomes the same person, and you see lots of little figures jumping up and down and hugging each other and jumping all over each other. But at one particular point in time, there'll be 20,000 people all feeling the same thing.
The real attraction of football is that sense of the collective, which is greater than the sum of the individuals in it. Reminds us of more traditional patterns of society, with tribal bonding, tribal groupings, allegiances within those tribes, those groups, being reinforced by the fact that you have a common enemy. And again, in football, I think you have to have an opposition, you have to have away fans. The games I've been to where there have been no away supporters have been a lot less interesting than the ones where the away fans have been fairly heavily represented. And that's not talking about aggression and violence. It's to do with the kind of spontaneous wit and repartee of chants from end to end, which is all part of that ritualistic tradition.
It's very difficult usually being a woman in a male environment, and for example, if you go to a pub and you don't drink, it's smile, love, it might never happen, and you do drink and they all think that you're up for it. And the thing about going to a football match is that you're not a woman anymore, you're just a football supporter in with all the other football supporters. And one of the first matches I went to, there were these two Swedish girls, you know, really pretty Swedish girls, sort of leaping up and down in front of us. And they were shouting at her. The fans behind me were shouting at them. And I thought, you know, oh, God, this is all going to go off. And then they turned around and they just said, oh, you two, sit down. Because they weren't worried about the Swedish girls. They were worried about them blocking the game.
It isn't a polite exercise of sitting back and applauding entertainment and being non-partisan and looking for very neutrally for a good game. It's about physically committing yourself to the club and the team, being part of the effort, actually feeling that you can really affect the outcome of the match.
Football is more intense than any other sport. Football clubs are bigger than any other club. They're there every week for you. The loyalty is stronger. The bond is stronger, if you like. You feel like they've got you and you've got them.
But it is stylized, ritualized warfare. And what we think of warfare today is very different from football. But if you look at traditional cultures, particularly New Guinea cultures, war is not about killing people. War is about dressing up. War is about style. War is about skill, fleetness of foot, and so on. And all those essential ingredients are exactly recast in the game of football. Very simple game. You have a ball. You're to do with aiming. It's to do with speed. And it's to do with hitting targets. It's warfare.
Hard to think what might replace it. I mean, it would have to be a simple, elementary activity that captures the imagination of local people in the way that football does, that has that particular balance of natural skill, natural ability, physical commitment, that allows individual expression, and perhaps particularly a team game that allows for heroic escapades. Because I think the game is about heroism. That's why football's the world game. That's why it's the most popular game around the world. That's why it's hard to find any society anywhere in the world that doesn't play or embrace the game.
It must have been a form of entertainment once upon a time, I guess. A ball, a few mates, and it's time for your tea before you know it. But then something happened somewhere along the line, and all this sex and misery and fear and euphoria and mania crept in. For most of us, the importance of the game is that it's the one constant, the thing that ties adulthood to childhood. We're all the same age on planet football, and we'll never, ever grow old.
I think it's got a bit too trendy, actually.
And good news for Simon Kimber, the Leicester City fan in that film. His team were promoted to the Premier League today. Commiserations to Derby County fans. Well, this is the rest of BBC Two's evening lineup, continuing in a moment with Football Hell. Action from the 1982 game between Italy and Brazil is at 9:55, then a half-time break. At 10:05, the greatest goal ever scored. Your chance to make history. Join in with the phone vote and make your choice. Alone at the end of the pitch, the goalkeeper stands. A solitary world, L'étranger at 10:15. That's followed by action from the 1984 game between France and Portugal. And at 10:35, the crying game, which will be followed by the result of the greatest goal. At 10:50, football in the hands of directors and actors in The Beautiful Frame. And at 11:05, the official film of the 1966 World Cup.